Hello. Imagine this. Imagine I was the Chancellor of the Exchequer, which is quite easy for you to do because Rachel Reeves currently holds that position, and I'm not an economist either. Anyway, imagine I was Chancellor of the Exchequer and I came on TV one night and said to you, "People of Britain, I'm going to impose a 4% tax on all the money you have starting tomorrow. Starting tomorrow, you'll be paying 4% more for your goods and services, and starting tomorrow, the money you have in the bank will have 4% taken from it by the government." Would you be ever so slightly peeved about that? Would you say, "Hey, you're taking my money without my consent"? Would you be annoyed? Well, why aren't you annoyed about inflation? Because that's what inflation is. You see, economists talk about inflation and we think it's got nothing to do with us, but it's got everything to do with us. In October of last year, the legacy of the Conservative Party, bad as they were, their legacy was an inflation rate of 2%. It was 3.6% at the beginning of 2025 when the Labour Party had been at work for a few months, and it's now 4%. That means your money is worth around 2% less than it was last year, and the number is going up. That's why we should all be worried about inflation. That's why it isn't a subject just for economists. Inflation reduces the value of your money, and governments get an indirect benefit from this because when you have inflation, people expect pay rises, which pushes them into a higher tax bracket. Or the price of goods has to go up, which means that VAT goes up as well. So you pay twice. Once when the value of your money gets reduced, and then again when the VAT goes up. Of course, this is a tax that affects the poor more than it affects the rich. That's great, isn't it? Pensioners, anyone on a fixed income, low earners generally, people living on their savings. Remember, if you're living on your savings are worth less and you're paying more for stuff in the shops. These sorts of people, they're the ones who lose out. People who own property and stocks and shares, that sort of thing, they might actually benefit. And that's why it's a tax on the poor. And that's why inflation is something even us non-economists have to think about, dry as that may seem. So I'm going to be talking about it, and I'm going to try and guess what's causing it. And in my opinion, it's the Labour government. And I'll tell you why. I'm Granniopteryx. Please like this video, please share it, please subscribe to my channel, please just click that subscribe button. YouTube are playing ducks and drakes with my subscriber numbers. Okay, if you want to contribute financially to my channel, all the links to the various methods of doing so are in the description, but please just click that like now, will you? All right, let's talk economics. Okay, the Conservative government took control in July 2024. The inflation rate, as interpreted by the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, in September 2024, inflation was 1.7%. In October, the Labour government having been in power for 3 months, it was 2.3%. According to the predictions of the economists, this was a surprise. Oh yeah? Let's continue. By October, the end of October, the inflation rate was 3.2%. By May of 2025, it was 3.4%. In June, it had climbed to 3.6%, and by the end of June, 4%. The Office of National Statistics described this rise as unexpected because economists said the rate would hold steady at 3.4%. Nobody was more surprised than the Bank of England, which seemed to think things would hold steady at 2%. Since I doubt many of us here on this channel are economists, perhaps you can have a guess why this happened. Well, this is the official version. In general, those set above us with the title expert are agreed that the reasons for this 4% bite out of our earnings has to do with increases in fuel and transport costs, and then of food prices. Just a minute. Transport, particularly motor fuels, made the largest upward contribution to the monthly change in both CPIH and CPI annual rates. Right, that's what the Office of National Statistics says. One possible reason for higher food prices would be higher costs of transport. If it costs more to transport, then it costs more on the shelves. There's a general agreement on what's causing this. So here's the short list. Fuel, airfares, again that's a fuel thing, rail fares, I suppose that might have to do with the extra money that the Labour Party bunged to the rail workers' unions for them helping the Labour Party get elected. Maintenance and repair of personal transport equipment. So there you have it. Fuel and transport goes up, and so food and other stuff that has to travel will also go up. So that's all right then, isn't it? That answers the question. Do you think that answers the question? Well, I didn't, but try as I might, I haven't found anything at all about the effects of simple economic uncertainty driving prices up. I couldn't find anything anywhere that said sinking confidence in the government is causing economic disaster. But frankly, that's my opinion. And again, as I say, just like Rachel Reeves, I'm not an economist. I'm going to outline my opinion to you, and you can tell me what you think in the comments underneath. So, economic uncertainty would reduce investor confidence, which would mean banks and various institutions like that would be charging more for lending out funds, which would affect business investment and so contribute to inflation. High levels of debt also contribute to inflation, and we have a lot of debt in this system, and it's going to be made worse by Rachel Reeves's lowering of the borrowing threshold. But that's a time bomb for the future. Meanwhile, in January, economists were looking at trends and predicting a 2% inflation rate by June. That being the case, might not they now look at those figures and guess that the present doubling of the inflation rate is a sign that it's the government's behaviour that's causing the trouble? It certainly wasn't market pessimism at the beginning of the year. You can't say that people stopped investing because the Bank of England said it would be a risky year. On the contrary, the Bank of England was saying, yes, everything's fine. And even with the Bank of England bigging up the economy, it's heading for a disaster. It's not going to stop at 4% now, is it? Economists can add up sums, but they can't account for human nature. And I am absolutely certain that the whole problem is the uncertainty over what this incompetent bunch are going to blunder into next. A weak government will struggle to implement effective economic policies, and this government is as weak as the sort of tea you get in Germany. A couple of weeks ago, Starmer wanted to cut welfare, and he was prevented from doing so by his own backbenchers. If his own majority is against him, how can he control anything else, least of all inflation? Not least because most of those superannuated students and union agitators on the back benches all believe there's a magic money tree up that beanstalk and we can just dish out money without end. This attitude will have its effect on any hard-headed investment brokers and businesses that may be looking at the British government and the British economy. It's going to have its effect on savings and business projections and all that sort of thing. I just want to cite a couple of the business decisions they've made to date. For instance, there's this. Our government is going to transfer millions to Mauritius for Mauritius to buy the Chagos Islands. Unbelievable. I've never heard of a sale where the person who's buying it from you gets paid by you. And yet, unbelievably, £101 million per year for the next 100 years is going to Mauritius. David Lammy thought that one up. Does that sound like a sensible proposal to you? Well, it wouldn't be to anyone thinking of investing here either. And then there was the Rachel Reeves private school chaos. Now, this is a really good example of how people can have their confidence in a government completely shattered. If you haven't been keeping up with this, in November of 2024, she announced that from January of 2025, that is in the middle of the school year, and with 2 months' notice, there would be a 20% tax on all private education. This sudden shock caused the closure of many of these schools mid-year. It imposed a sudden financial burden on local councils who found themselves trying to house a lot of extra pupils for whom they had no budgets and no school places. And of course, it threw thousands of families into disruption and despair. Some of those families would have been running small businesses. And I've heard of some who've given up work because they've got to transport a child miles away to the nearest school that had an available place. It was obviously a policy driven by vindictiveness rather than economic reality, and it cannot have given anyone, any external investor, confidence in whatever next the government might wish to destroy out of envy. Would you invest in that sort of an outfit? I mean, think about it. Now, we're in the realms of imagination again. Imagine you're a huge Japanese factory owner. Oh, I don't mean that you're particularly overweight. I mean that you're a factory, that you are the Japanese owner of a huge factory. Would you invest in anything to do with a government like that? It doesn't have to be a foreign investor, of course. There's a pall of pessimism and uncertainty felt by almost everyone I know or know of. Now, admittedly, I only know people on the lower financial strata, farmers, fishing businesses, shop owners, that sort of thing. I don't fly in high economic circles, but I can't believe that this pessimism is confined just to these lower strata of society. Can you imagine some British captain of industry discussing with his board of directors the possibility of opening a new branch in Liverpool, say? Open a new branch in Liverpool? Well, perhaps not. New employment laws, extra taxes, workers' rights, national insurance. Would it be worth the effort? And all the board, anyone with any sense, would be there with their heads in their hands. And there you have it. Rising prices, no movement, no enterprise. There's a word for that. It's called stagflation. And that's where we're heading. I'm quite sure of it. And as I say, like Rachel Reeves, I'm not an economist, But unlike Rachel Reeves, I'm not a vindictive ideologist either. OK, till next time. You can help my channel by subscribing and clicking the notification bell. That's quite important. And by sharing if you're so inclined. Links to my other channels and to donation methods are in the description. But the best way you can help is simply by clicking like and notify. Thank you.